Welcome to another episode of Jews in the World. I'm Phyllis Zimbler-Miller, and today my guest is Roger Grunwald, who's going to tell us about a very special project that he's involved with. And I'm going to let him start from the beginning and tell you about it right now.
Thank you, Phyllis. Well, and I appreciate you having me on your program and giving me an opportunity to share information about the Mitzvah Project, which I will tell you about right now. So the Mitzvah Project is a three-part, 70-minute Holocaust education / social justice presentation. Now, although our target is primarily high school and college students, we often give presentations at religious and secular organizations as well. So the program features an original one-act solo play called The Mitzvah, as well as a lecture with a PowerPoint and a Q&A with the audience. For high schools and colleges, we also provide a companion online study guide to help orient students to the subject matter in advance of the presentation, because as you probably know, despite the fact that, for example, in California and about 28 states right now, Holocaust education is mandated, the extent to which there's any emphasis on Holocaust education in classes or in school districts varies greatly from one to the other. So oftentimes we present in schools where there's supposed to be some level of Holocaust education and the students are blank slates. So the study guide is really important, especially we have to encourage teachers to make use of them. And when they do, the students come in with some level of understanding of what it is we're going to be talking about. Anyway, that's the world.
Okay, now wait, let's talk about the play. What does the first part, the play, really talk about? And I understand actors, and you're a professional actor yourself. So what's the point of view? What material is covered?
Well, the mitzvah is a dramatic exploration of and kind of explores the interconnection of two people who crossed paths during the darkest days of the Holocaust. One of the people is a half-Jewish first lieutenant in the Wehrmacht, Christoph Rosenberg. The other
let's tell people what the Wehrmacht is. It's the German
Wehrmacht
army.
It's actually the armed forces. It's the overarching
the military.
Descriptive. Yeah, it's the German military during the war, the Wehrmacht. So he was this character, Christoph, was a first lieutenant in the Wehrmacht, and he's half Jewish.
Wait, is this a real person or
It's a composite. Okay. It's based on material. I was heavily influenced. One of the stories I wanted to tell you was how I came about writing this. When I visited with my aunt, my mother's sister, in Los Angeles a number of years ago. She's an intellectual. She was kind of one of the heads of the UCLA Fulbright program for many years. She was a voracious reader. And when I was interviewing her, when I was developing material, this is around 2011, she gave me a book called Hitler's Jewish Soldiers by the author Brian Mark Rigg. And I had no concept of this aspect of the German Jewish experience. And when I started reading the book, I couldn't put it down. And it talked about the ways in which over many centuries, since the time of Moses Mendelssohn, and another book, by the way, I'll mention that was also very influential was The Pity of It All by Amos Olam. Very interesting book about the history of German Jews. Anyway, but one of the things I learned from both books is the role that Moses Mendelssohn played in the 1700s in Germany. At that time, German Jews were primarily lived in ghettos. They didn't read or write or speak German. They only spoke Judendeutsch, which was the German variant of Yiddish. They had very isolated lives. And Mendelssohn was the first German to translate the Torah into German, actually using Hebrew characters. He transliterated it. Over time, and Moses kind of made it his life's work to create conditions where German Jews could find their way into German society. And over time, number of generations, they did. The trouble is, anti-Semitism wasn't dead in Germany, whether in the 1700s, 1800s, or 1900s. I mean, German Jews, did get a seat at the table in the German dominated, in the Christian dominated culture of Germany. But over time, many German Jews felt they had to become more German and less Jewish. And by the time 1939 rolled around, there were tens of thousands of German Jews or Jews of German descent from mixed families, mixed, blended families, who were actually in the Wehrmacht. During World War I, many German Jews fought bravely, actually, and suffered casualties at a higher proportion than the rest of the country, and also received medals of valor disproportionate to their numbers in the population. They were, if we were talking about mass psychology, German Jews were in a position where they felt they had to prove themselves to their non-Jewish fellow citizens. Problem is, it didn't really work out in the end. So anyway, this character that I created, Christoph Rosenberg, is a composite of a number of these. The German, by the way, the Nazis called these mixed race or Jews from blended families who were like half Jewish or quarter Jewish. They called them Mischlings, Mischlinge, which was a derogatory term, which literally translated into mongrel or half breed. Anyway, so Rig wrote this book, and I felt it was an important story to be told. And I felt that I had the opportunity as a person of the theater myself to create something and also to draw on my family history. I wanted to create this to honor my mom and her sister, who were the only ones living, at that time. My mom was living until 2001. Sorry, my aunt was alive, but I wanted to create this kind of an homage to both of them. But I just want to backtrack a little bit about my mom's family, if I can do that.
Absolutely.
Okay. My mom and her family is from Frankfurt am Main in Germany. My mom was born in 1915. They fled Germany in the mid 30s and moved to Amsterdam, as did many German Jews. After all, Holland was neutral in World War One. I
As
thought that
did
was
Anne
safe.
Frank's family. Let's point out they moved from
Exactly.
Frankfurt to Amsterdam.
Absolutely. And there were a lot of them. I mean, not that my mother's family didn't know the Franks. They were in different parts of the city. But by May of 1940, when Holland capitulated, it was just a matter of time before my mother's family, as well as most every other Jew in Amsterdam, and not to mention the rest of Holland, was rounded up and deported. So in 1943, my mom's family was having dinner in their apartment in Amsterdam, and Dutch Nazis came to the door, rounded them up. My mother's younger sister, Ilse, and her father were deported to Sobibor, where they were murdered.
Yes, let's just point out Sobibor was the
Sobibor in
extermination camp.
Poland.
Yes.
Yes, it was. It was, yeah. My mom was first deported to a Nazi concentration camp in Holland called Vught. And from there, she was deported to Auschwitz. My mother's older sister, Annie, was deported to Bergen-Belsen, and the two of them did survive. And my mom, after recovering in a Red Cross camp in Malmo, Sweden, after the war, made her way to the United States. Now, I'm going to tell my father's story quickly. My father was a refugee. He and his mother left Germany. He was from a town called Beuthen in Upper Silesia, which is now part of Poland. They left and they made their way to the Philippines, which was one of a handful of countries that admitted Jewish refugees. My father lived in Manila. His mom died. He lived in Manila until the Japanese overran the islands, and he fled to a southern island called Mindanao, where he was in hiding during the war. And when the GIs, when the U.S. recaptured the Philippines, he befriended a GI, an American GI, who was born a German Jew. And that GI wrote my father an affidavit allowing him to come to the country, which he did in 1947. He came to San Francisco, where we ended up we ended up having a family, or that is, he had a family. But he traveled to New York to thank this GI for getting him out of the Philippines. And it was at the end of 1947. And my mom, as it turned out, her first cousin was married to that GI, and they had a that GI and his wife had a New Year's Eve party, and it's at that New Year's Eve party that my mom and dad met. So that's kind of the story. So as I was backtracking, as I backtrack now to the story of the Mitzvah Project, so I started writing. I was in a class, by the way, I wanted to mention this. I was in a class, a professional scene study class in New York, led by a great man of the theater, Win Hanman, who was a great developer of solo artists. Actually, I don't know if you know that your audience might know the name of John Leguizamo, Eric Bogosian. These are two actor solo artists that Win Hanman helped to develop. And when I was in class, there was an actress working on a solo piece, and a light bulb went off in my head. I wanted to do something to draw on my family history, but I didn't know what. But then I light on this idea of doing a solo piece. So that's when I went to Los Angeles to interview my aunt. That's when she gave me this book, Hitler's Jewish Soldiers by Brian Mark Rigg. And that's when I started writing this character, Christoph Rosenberg. That was the first character I wrote. Then I had been doing some research on the liquidation of the Bialystok ghetto. It was relatively little was known, I mean, in comparison to Warsaw. And I found out that there was one of the few survivors of the liquidation was living in Israel. So I decided to travel to Israel to interview him, Shimei Kitzelstein. He lived in a town called Yehud, between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. I interviewed him and developed some material. And as it turned out, I created this character, Shmuel Berkowitz, which was not drawn so much on him, but it was informed by what I learned from Shimei Kitzelstein. And I started to then assemble a 25-minute short play called The Mitzvah. I first performed it at a festival for one-act plays in New York. And after my performance, a man stood up in the audience during their Q&A and said, "I want to bring you to my shul." And I said, "Great."
Wait.
So
Did you play both parts? Is that how you, in the
I
beginning?
played all, actually, there's a third character. It's multiple characters, and it's one played by one actor. Yes, I played the two parts plus a third part, which I haven't gotten to yet, really. It's the third part is a chorus. It's a Groucho Marx-esque character who provides kind of sardonic commentary during the play. It helps people understand what's going on. For those of your listeners and audience who know, classical Greek theater
Yes.
traditionally has a character, it's played by multiple people, called a chorus, which kind of helps the audience to understand what's going on. It informs them. It's kind of like anyway, and in the case of the chorus, the Groucho Marx-esque chorus that I created for this play, it was both to give the audience a bit of a reprieve from the tension. It's an intense drama, and kind of to make it less relentless, it kind of gives them a break. It's like a safety net. And this character kind of probes the boundary between the absurd and the horrific. So there are three major characters. There are some minor characters in the play too. But those are the three main characters, and the story revolves between Christoph and Shmuel. You got to see it to understand what I'm saying.
And do they meet
And
after the war? Is that the,
nope, they meet during the darkest days of the Holocaust.
you're not going to
But
give
I'm
us
not going
any, you're not going to
to.
give us,
No, what you can see an example of this is when I was doing the presentation online on my website, www.themitzvah.org/video. You can see the actual the play, the lecture, and the talk back. I did this was a recording from a presentation I did at New Utrecht High School in Brooklyn a couple years ago. But it'll give you all the elements, including the play. So
I will include the URL in the bottom. I just want to say, in my nonfiction Holocaust play, thinedgeofthewedge.com, I use newscasters, news announcements, kind of in place of the chorus to keep the audience both grounded and moving the chronology forward.
Yeah,
So I
understood.
think it's
Sounds good.
important to help the audience not get lost in the story.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And in my case, it does function as a safety net. And when I was working with my original director on this, Annie McGreevy, who was a very talented actor and director in her own right, we were I was thinking that we needed to have some kind of other character to again to keep the relentlessness of the tragedy, the drama from overwhelming the audience. So we thought maybe some kind of comic relief. We were thinking of Woody Allen. This is before all the stuff with him. It's gone on, but then we realized he's too neurotic. So then we came up with the idea of Groucho, Groucho Marx. So when I and the teaching artist do a performance, it's Groucho Marx light. It's not. There's no mustache. There's no glasses. There's a cigar, and there's a bit of a voice to give kind of an impression. But it's designed, as I said, to kind of be a safety valve for the audience, both to help them understand what's going on and to give them a break.
So
Well,
how
you'll
do,
see. Go
so
ahead.
how do synagogues, etc., get this performance?
How do they get it? In other words, how do they bring us in
Yes.
or understand it? Okay. Well, they reach out to me or I reach out to them. I mean, right now I'm kind of the key booker. Most of the all the performances right now. My last performance was in September, was in April of 23 at Sonoma State University. That's the last time I think I'm going to be performing this because the teaching artists are doing it. I'll tell you a little bit about the teaching artists, if that would be
Yes,
helpful.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, these are three highly skilled professional actors, each of whom has extensive stage, film, and TV experience. I can tell you more specifically about them. So in 2022, over a few months, I recruited and then trained these actors to become teaching artists. And one of the unique things about them, why I chose them and they chose themselves, is each has a riveting personal story to tell about a family member who survived the Holocaust. So in their presentations, they use their skills to immerse students in, an historically accurate and deeply personal journey.
So
And then,
your
mhm.
performances, though, are only, I say only, live. You don't do it.
Yes, during the pandemic, I did it on Zoom,
But now
which
that,
which you, but now that the pandemic is hopefully over, yes, we're doing it in person, and we go everywhere. Where we just did presentations. One of our teaching artists did a presentation for 1,000 students over 2 days in Taunton, Massachusetts. We've been in Florida, we're in Colorado. Well, we've been to 27 states altogether. Also, when I was doing this full time, I did presentations in Canada, the UK, and Israel. I was invited in Israel by the Vidal Sassoon Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism at Hebrew University to present during coinciding with Yom HaShoah in 2017. And then the next day I did it at Ben Gurion University in Beersheba. But
so
we've done it. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. I want to know
No.
what is the reaction to the students? Tell me, give us a little feel for when you do it.
Well, the students, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about at this particular time or in general over time.
And
Students
you
have
can
been
talk
very,
about how it's changed since October 7th if you'd like to make a distinction.
yeah. Well, I'll segue to that right now. I mean, one of the things I just wanted to say, um, our job and our mission is to teach young people the critical lessons of the Holocaust and to help them understand that the roots of prejudice that gave rise to the Holocaust is at the core of the hate, intolerance, anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia, and white supremacy in America today. And this is so you and your audience know we don't do Gaza. If we did, given what's happening in colleges and schools today, and for the last few months, it would derail our important lesson and the opportunity to help young people learn what we have to teach. So if we get questions like, well, what's your position on Gaza? Well, or something to that effect. We say, well, thanks for the question. This is what our teaching artists will say, something along these lines. Well, let me ask you a question back. You just saw the play, The Mitzvah. You just heard my lecture where I talk about things like the ways in which America's Jim Crow laws provided a model for the Nazi lawyers who drafted the Nuremberg laws, or how America's eugenics movement, which promulgated laws like legalizing forced sterilization of so-called undesirables, namely people who are poor or people of color, and that in California they sterilized more so-called undesirables than all the other states combined. And it was the statute on the books in California that was the model for the Nazi program of forced sterilization. So you just heard all that. So what's your takeaway? What did you learn? So we want to refocus the students on if we get, and we frankly haven't gotten these questions. We haven't gotten what's your position on Gaza, because they're taken by what we teach. I think they understand that what we're doing is teaching these lessons connected to the Holocaust, which connect to America, which they need to learn. So, but we make we make it pretty clear, but we haven't actually been taken there by the students when they see and they pay attention to what we're doing. Am I answering your question?
Yes. So what kinds of questions do they ask based on exactly what they've seen rather than?
Well, they want to know for more personal information from, like, let's say Elijah Alexander. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Elijah. So he has a riveting story to tell about his uncle Julius, who quite incredibly survived capture by the Gestapo. And after the war was responsible for single-handedly bringing Elijah's family to the States. I'll tell you also about another one of our teaching artists, Victor Talmadge. Victor's mother was one of only 8 relatives amongst hundreds in his extended family who were living in Poland prior to the war to have survived the Holocaust. So after fleeing to Lithuania, his mother was one of the lucky roughly 2,000 Jews who got transit visas through Japanese consular official Shione Fujihara. And again, you might know that story about Fujihara.
Yes,
Victor's
I
great.
do.
Okay. And Victor's great uncle, David Olaire, was an artist prior to the war. Olaire was the only survivor of Auschwitz to pictorially document the gas chambers. You see, he was one of the few Auschwitz Sonderkommando to have survived the war. And for those of you who don't know what a Sonderkommando is, there was an unfortunate group of Jews who was selected to work the gas chambers and the crematoria. And usually after about a 6 weeks of working in those places, they were murdered. And the next crop was brought in. The Nazis didn't want there to be any eyewitnesses to what they were doing. So he was lucky because he was a Sonderkommando at the very end when the SS ended up hightailing it out of there, and he was not murdered. So he was able to pictorially document what he saw. So the students will ask, they often ask personal questions like, can you tell me, what was an average day like for your great uncle, David? What can you tell me, what did he talk about? Or did you ever ask him questions about what it was like? When I did this, they asked me, like, what happened to your mom on the death march? What was that like? I think students don't have it's. I think most people don't have a way of comprehending what the extent of human, the horrors that are visited on human beings. Young people have, and older people, anyone can't imagine. It's unimaginable what happened to people, and students sometimes want to know more. But it's usually, these are personal questions, and oftentimes, and we get letters from students too, because one of the things in the study guide, we encourage students to dig deeper into their experience of what they have seen, and to write letters to the teaching artists. And they've sometimes written letters about how, like, there's a young woman of color from Sonoma State University who says, now having seen what you present, I have a different understanding of Anne Frank's diary, things like that. So it's a mix, but typically it's not so much they're asking history questions, they're asking personal questions. And that's one of the powers that I think we can bring to this because our teaching artists talk very personally about what happened to their own family. Um, and when they and the play provides kind of an emotional context. So let me give you an example. At one point in the play, Shmuel, the Polish Jew from Bialystok, arrives on the platform at Auschwitz, and and he falls on his knees and begs for his life to an imaginary SS man in front of him. But these actors can what they can bring to the moment with their skill as actors is is bringing the reality of the moment to life. And I think it gives the audience, the students, an opportunity to have a visceral, emotional learning opportunity. And I think that's something that's, you can, how the students react to that, for example, a moment like that is much different than reading a book. I mean,
Oh,
everything has value, reading books, hearing lectures, but there's something that we can bring, I think, to the experience that approaches approaches, but we can never duplicate what a survivor can do by telling their own story, standing in front of young people. We can do some. We can bring students close to that, and that's I think one of the powers of our presentation.
I think theater is, it's, to me, it's the most important way to teach or to reach young people. I think that you can show, and I have watched documentary over documentary, but I don't think that piled bodies really helps young people understand. And even visiting concentration camps without seeing the thousands of people, to see them uh, clear of people, just to see the buildings. There's something
Yeah.
about theater and bringing out emotions that you just, I don't know, it's too, the term is
Yeah.
just can't beat, but it's just amazing.
Yes. If I mean my one of my most powerful experiences, I did a presentation at Catholic Memorial High School in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a number of years ago, in their gymnasium, and there were like 500 some odd students there. And I was on this platform. Yeah, it wasn't a theater. We sometimes do it in less than ideal theatrical conditions, but that doesn't matter if the students are paying attention and if the teaching artists can help bring them to the moment that you're in. I could hear a pin drop in that room um, when I was doing the performance because students were clearly engaged. So again, I think that the school has a responsibility to help set the set the theme. So by giving young people some grounding in what they're about to experience, but we can't force schools and teachers to do that right now. Unfortunately, after the pandemic, many schools are are stretched to the limit. They've lost, to attrition. Teachers, their staff, they're short staffed, and teachers don't have time. Some of them don't have interest in doing more than what they need to do. So it's a tough hill to climb, but you got to put your stuff out there and hope that the teachers and the students and the administrators will um, help by um, making our job not easier, but helping to create the context for us. It's tough, but
What you're doing is wonderful. Your mother would be proud, is all I could say. And
I yeah, I think about her a lot. I did this. I'm just going to segue. Didn't mean to interrupt,
it's okay.
but I wrote a full length one person play when I written the mitzvah. I realized 25-minute play you get can't fill a theater and have people expect to for their ticket price. watch a 25-minute play. So I decided that I was going to deepen and expand it, which I did. I wrote a play called The Obligation, which actually the mitzvah exists in its entirety in it, but the characters have much more deeper storylines. There are other characters. There's an SS general, Odilo Globochnik, who was actually the guy who was responsible for the liquidation of Warsaw, um, Bialystok, and a number of other ghettos. Anyway, I most people don't know that name. I gave him a character. Anyway, so he and these other characters and a bunch of other ones are in this play, which is now called I Died in Auschwitz. Was originally called The Obligation. I did it twice, but I before I went on stage, I would be in the dressing room, and like a few minutes before, I would have a conversation with my mother about, and she was kind of my biggest cheerleader in my imagination. But it helped because I kind of let her know that I was going to go out there and do this play and say what I was saying, um, kind of for her.
And are you still interested in performing I Died in Auschwitz, The Obligation?
Well, there are a couple of people that are we had two performances in San Francisco, and they were well received. Good, the critics liked it a lot, and it's so I'm not necessarily going to be doing it myself. I think I've aged out of it a little bit, but there are two people now who are looking to get it reproduced somewhere in the LA area, if possible, and possibly in the San Francisco area. But it's still in process. I have a great video. If people are interested in learning more about this, either the Mitzvah Project in schools or the obligation slash I Died in Auschwitz, the full length play, I'd be happy to be in touch with them.
Is
We'd love to.
Yeah, go ahead. So
No,
on
I'd love to see.
your website, which I have on another screen right here. So is there
Mhm.
information about the obligation? I'm just going to go.
Yes, if you go to if you're on any of the pages, the toolbar on top, it's not a great website, which we have to change.
Oh, I see. It's right there. I died in
Yeah,
Auschwitz. Got
yeah.
it.
You click on that and you'll see more about it. And if people want to see a full video of what the play is, it's great. I'd be happy to get that to you. There's a trailer there and interview newspaper clippings and it
So
goes into.
looking at the site, because I don't like to put anyone's email publicly on a
Mhm.
YouTube video, is
Yeah,
there a place where they can contact you through the
yeah,
site?
yeah. Let me get it up myself so I
Okay.
can.
As long as it's there, they can find it.
Oh yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah, it
it's
says
there.
connect with us, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So that's how I just like to make it as easy as possible for people to do something.
yeah,
So
yeah. If you would put the URL up for both, because one of them is actually the I survived. Um, I died in Auschwitz is www.survivingauschwitz.com.
survive. Okay,
Surviving,
you'll send it to me.
surviving. Okay.
Okay. And okay. Okay, fine. And I do see that I'm looking at it now. Okay. There's contact information for you there. So we'll make sure to put it in the description. And do you have any last words that you'd like to share?
Um, well, if well, I guess the last words I have is I've been meeting with a number of state legislators. I don't know if I told you this or if you know, April 29th, um, the Jewish caucus of the California State Legislature had commemorate their annual commemoration of Yom HaShoah. They honored 10 people for their work in Holocaust education. I was one of them, along with Tony Thurmond and Anita Friedman and a number of others from the ADL and whatnot. And I've been in touch with a number of these state legislators who are part of the Jewish caucus of California. And we're working now to bring the mitzvah project into high schools in their districts,
Excellent.
and
Excellent.
they're going to help connect with superintendents and administrators. So we're looking to get this as far and wide as possible. That we have to get young people out of. I mean, the profound level of ignorance of the Holocaust is a um, is a serious problem for our society, and we got to do everything. I mean, actually, there's a movement right now to pressure Gavin Newsom to pass a bill that would fund Holocaust and genocide education with $2 million, and he has to sign it. So there's a pressure campaign going on right now. So if people can help with that, that'd be great. If people want to be in touch with me, and some administrators in schools in your area, let's talk. I'd love to bring it to those schools. So, and I really appreciate, Phyllis, you taking the time to talk with me and inviting me to talk with you and your audience.
Well, I
I'm very
really
grateful.
appreciate what you're doing. So I'm happy to talk with you. And let's hope that really good things come of course, out of your play, but out of this interview, because you never know who will listen and get in touch with you. And let's hope more and more people get to see your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Nice talking to you. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.